On January 13, 2012, the cruise ship Costa Concordia, which is owned by Carnival Corporation, struck a rock and keeled over, killing 32 of its passengers. At 7 p.m. on Friday, January 13th, the Costa Concordia set sail for the 7-day cruise from a port near Rome with 4,229 people on board. The white line demonstrates the ship's regular route taken every week. The red line demonstrates the deviated route the captain took on January 13th in order to get closer to the island of Giglio for passengers. At 9:30 p.m., the ship struck a rock just off the island of Giglio as the captain made an unauthorized decision to direct the ship into an unfamiliar marine area. At 9:45 p.m., the ship begins listing, and this is when the first call to land is made. Almost 1 hour after the ship struck rocks, at 10:10 p.m., the captain finally put out a distress call to the Coast Guard. By the time the evacuation gets underway, lifeboats on one side of the tilting ship are unusable. People start to jump into the water to escape the sinking boat, and the captain is found on the shore despite many warnings from the Coast Guard to return to the ship. In the aftermath of the sinking ship, the ship's captain is arrested for involuntary manslaughter for the 32 deaths, causing a maritime disaster and causing personal injury to 150 people. The Carnival Corporation was also heavily scrutinized by the public and other organizations for their actions following the incident. So this absolutely was a crisis situation for the Carnival Corporation because it directly threatened the core values that the industry is based around, and that's its safety. There was passengers' lives being put at risk, there was worried family members, as well as intense media coverage around the event. So the corporation's reputation as well as its relationship with its key stakeholders were being put into question. So according to Timothy Coombs' crisis type matrix, I believe that this crisis is an overlap between two types of crisis types, and that's accidental because it was a human-induced error, as well as transgressional because it was an intentional act taken by the ship's captain that put the corporation's stakeholders at harm and risk. So first I'm going to discuss the most appropriate type of crisis communication that the Carnival Corporation should have taken, and then whether or not they followed these strategies. So because the ship's captain was directly responsible for causing this event, a distancing strategy will not work. From the perception of the stakeholders, they are highly responsible for the events that took place, and what's important in crisis communications is that it's always from the perspective of the stakeholders that matters. So the Carnival Corporation needs to take an acceptance strategy. So this includes tactics of issuing a full apology, remediation, which is offering some type of compensation towards the victims, as well as repentance. So asking for the public's forgiveness for what took place. In addition, they also need to take an accommodative strategy. So this includes rectification. And what are they going to do to ensure that this isn't going to happen again in the future? So now within my communication discussions, I will also discuss some of the areas in which the Carnival Corporation failed. Now, while the direct result of the accident wasn't within their control, they did fail in a lot of areas in which they did have control. First, this includes their contingency plans. Now, initially, right after the event in the evacuation procedure, there was a lot of confusion amongst passengers as well as the crew that led to deaths as well as injuries. As well as the hours and days after the event, there was a lot of confusion as to what they should be doing for their stakeholders. There were also an absence of the CEO for several days after the incident occurred, where the CEO should always be present, and this really showed a lack of sympathy towards the victims and their direct needs. So there's two alternative approaches that I'll take a look at within my report, and that includes both in the crisis stage and certain communication strategies that should have been taken with the Carnival Corporation stakeholders, as well as in the Latin stage and the presence of both human and organizational errors that is continuing to happen over time, where these issues are always there, which allows it to progress into another crisis. And it happened with the Titanic, as well as 100 years later with the Costa Concordia.